salt dug into his exposed flesh like iron into water. He screamed hoarsely through the blood, so that the fingers of the nearest boyar trembled on the hilt of his knife. Prince Vladimir Starodubsky, son of the Grand Prince, owner of dozens of towns, screamed on his knees before the icon, while white powder was poured onto the cut skin of his back. He was not crowned. He was salted like meat before a campaign. The crown did not shine, but weighed heavily, and no one stopped the ritual, because he himself had ordered it to begin. His last weeks were weak, foul-smelling, and full of foreboding. The illness began on one of the December nights after the evening interrogation of a Pskov monk. At that time, the prince was still standing, holding a black broom in his hand and blessing the heretic's body with oaths. A servant standing behind him noticed how the prince's right hand trembled and his fingers twisted. A day later, his hand turned blue. Then came fever, intestinal failure, cracks on the lips, and bloody boils in the armpits. A doctor named Trofim, summoned from Torjuk, pointed out wet rot in the liver, possible decomposition of the spleen, blood poisoning during the examination. Bloodletting through the heels did not help. The blood flowed slowly, thickly, with a black sediment. The urine was black, with flakes. Touching him caused him to groan. 5 days later, he was transferred to a ward above the church of John the Baptist. It was located inside the fortress, with one door and 2 small windows covered with copper grates. The prince did not want to be seen. His sweat-soaked clothes were removed with tongs, and his wounds were treated with ash, onion infusion, vodka, and salt. He ordered that the pus not be washed away, saying, "Let them see how I return to dust." He often raved. He called for his father, cursed his mother, and ordered that the entrails of those who whisper in the corner be cut out. The servants did not sleep, waiting for signs. Sometimes he demanded to be taken to the temple, sometimes to have his tongue torn out. On the 5th day, he no longer recognized the voivodes. 3 remained by his side, a mute guard, a priest named Seraphim, and a doctor. All the others were sent away. The guards outside the door were ordered to change every 2 hours. The smell coming from the chamber made it impossible to stand there. Testimony from Mikhail's servant. His eyes were running, filth was oozing from his mouth, his neck was covered with spots, and his body was twitching, even in his sleep, as if someone were crawling inside him. In the reports of the Novgorod chronicler, the prince's face became dark, his tongue swelled, and his fingernails fell off like bark after a fire. Meanwhile, under the tower, power was being divided up. His father had died 3 months earlier, and the Great Seal remained unbroken. The senior boyars demanded that power be transferred to Vladimir, but the prince hesitated. His illness made succession impossible. Those around him waited for death and prepared their own people. Boyar Ostafi created a support group for his younger brother. Scribes rewrote the documents. There was even an attempt to poison him. A potion in honey found in the refectory was recognized as foreign and burned. The suspected cook was quartered, but the prince did not die. He suffered. His body swelled, his skin burst from the pressure. Servants described yellow pus-filled sacs all over his torso. The doctor suggested cutting them open with a hot iron, but the prince refused. He asked for only one thing: salt, lots of it. Let it draw everything out of me: water, blood, spirit. Thus began the procedure that later became the subject of legends. He was laid on boards, his skin was cut along his spine, and a mixture of salt, ash, and crushed garlic was rubbed into the wounds. This lasted about 3 hours. The screams could be heard even on the walls. The priest was silent. The guards did not enter. After that, the prince did not speak again. He moaned, nodded, or shook his head. Fluid dripped from his mouth, and the doctor noted in his notes, "The final phase has begun. The brain is inflamed, the organs are rotting, the body is losing its shape. Nevertheless, he was still breathing. They prepared him for death. A secret service was held during the night. Penitential psalms were read over the body. But in the morning, he opened his eyes. He demanded to be crowned by force. Then the boys decided that this was a sign. A circle was gathered, an icon, clothes, a seal, and everything else needed for the transfer of power were brought in, and the ceremony began. Not a prayer, but a symbolic one. While the prince lay there, his wounds were sprinkled with salt again, as if to strengthen his will. The boyars stood motionless. He screamed. He begged for mercy, but not with words, with moans and convulsions. A servant described it. His skin was like pulp. It spread out under my fingers. His head jerked. His eyes popped out. Steam came out of his mouth. Thus, the ceremony passed. He survived. The next day, he lost consciousness. Death came 2 days later, during the night. The official cause of death was listed as destruction of the body due to internal decay. Doctors noted that his liver had completely decomposed. His intestines had burst. His brain was covered with a dark film. No embalming was performed. The body began to stink before it was carried out. The coffin was welded from tin and filled with resin. The funeral was held in silence, without bells, without people. After that, the struggle began. The younger brother proclaimed himself prince. Executions began. The clerks who had served the deceased were slaughtered. The boyars of Starodub swore allegiance to the new ruler. The church remained silent. The chronicles called Vladimir the leper prince, crowned with salt and poisoned by repentance. The people believed that he had sold his soul to the devil and was burned in his coffin. The burial site was abandoned. The stone with his name was destroyed. After the funeral, the body continued to emit a foul odor for 2 days. The sealed coffin, covered with tar and wax, was kept in the basement until dawn, because none of the deacons dared to serve the all-night vigil. The monastery journal records, a vapor emanated from the burial chamber, causing Brother Onufrius to bleed from the nose and the cellar's skin to peel from his fingers. The coffin was carried out by 6 serfs, one of whom later died of fever, and another went mad. The deceased was buried without singing or bells. The tombstone was lowered 7 cubits into the ground, and the pit was filled with lime. No cross or board was placed on top of the mound. The body decomposed while still alive, as 3 chroniclers wrote. He was like a swamp inside, brown, rotten, and writhing, according to the records of the physician Trofim, preserved in the church of Michael the Archangel in Drozhev. Of those who touched the prince in his last days, 5 died within a month, 4 left the principality, and 2 later took a vow of silence in a monastery. An aura of damnation quickly formed around his name. Children were not named Vladimir. Salted ashes were forbidden to be kept in the house. Meanwhile, the authorities did not wait. On the 3rd day after the funeral, his younger brother Dmitri, who had been in Pereyaslav, entered Starodub with 200 armed men. No one resisted. The boyars who had witnessed the death swore allegiance. The first was Ostafi, who had previously been preparing a coup but had not succeeded. The decree appointing him as the new voivode was signed on the same day. Vladimir's seal, charred and blackened, was symbolically broken at the porch of the prince's palace and thrown into a pond. Servants who knew the last orders of the deceased were summoned for questioning. Some said that before his death, the prince had ordered to lock the temple until the salt has melted from the bones. Others claimed that he had left a curse, promising to return in tar and ashes. One boy who carried water to the prince's chambers claimed that just before his death, the prince had scratched the words, "I did not want to," on the wall with his fingernail. No trace of these words was found, but the entire stone wall was removed and burned in the forge. Meanwhile, rumors spread to Novgorod. Messengers reported that the prince had been killed in Starodub by torture. One of the clerks who fled to Torzhok said that the body was not like a body. The wounds oozed salt, as if the flesh were rotten and the skin was flaking off. The church hesitated for a long time before speaking out. A letter from the abbot Varsanofi to the metropolitan said, "And if he was crowned, it was not by the Holy Spirit, but by the rot of his conscience." Anxiety began to spread among the princes. Dmitri, having fortified himself in the palace, sent servants to neighboring fiefdoms with the intention of securing recognition. One of the letters contained the phrase, "The will of the Lord has been fulfilled, the poisoned one has departed, and the banner has survived." But it was this messenger who was detained in Mojaisk and interrogated. From his confessions, it became clear that Vladimir's body had not been completely buried. Some of his internal organs, removed by doctors, had been buried separately, and his heart had been burned. This was confirmed by the sexton Savli, who was later captured in Kolomna. During interrogation, he confessed they were afraid that he would rise again, and they didn't put a cross on him, only salt. Fires broke out within the principality itself. In mid-March, 3 weeks after the burial, the barns in the lower courtyard burned down. Then the cell of the priest who had prayed over the dying man. Then the mill built on the site of the executed monk. The people whispered, "He's coming back." They refused to perform purification rites. Monks were not allowed in. Dmitri ordered a new chapel to be dug on top of the burial site, and the foundation to be filled with lead. It was built in 7 days. No windows were made. The door was boarded up. It was not given a name. The new government couldn't get a firm grip. A year later, there was a rebellion in the counties. Tver refused to recognize Dmitri. The church didn't send its blessing. Western princes started talking about splitting up the land, and the people were afraid. No one trampled on the salty ground where the prince was buried. Even 10 years later, shepherds avoided it. The lid cracked, and according to one of the monks, something knocked at night in the cracks. The official chronicles of Starodub soon ceased to mention Vladimir. His line was not continued. His name was not passed on. Documents bearing his signature were burned. No one opened his coffin. Only a generation later, during a census of the princely archives, was a sheet of paper found with a handwritten inscription, "If God thirsts for my blood, let him drink it slowly, and whoever crowns with salt will not save the soul." The sheet was burned, but the inscription remained in the chronicles as the words of a decaying man. His death became a lesson for those who wanted power through pain, and his cry remained between the walls, under the stone, in the lime. In the words of those who remembered, he was crowned, but not by his own will. And the curse did not come from God. It came from the prince himself, rotting alive in his own body with his own salt by his own hand.